If you've ever been disillusioned, disappointed, or discouraged in your search for love, and you know there has to be a better way to find the healthy, soul-filling love you've always longed for, then you've discovered the podcast for you. I know, as Ken's work personally has led me to find the love of my life. So here's your host of Deeper Dating, Ken Page.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Deeper Dating Podcast. I'm Ken Page. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm the author of the best-selling book, Deeper Dating, and your host on this podcast. And today, I'm excited to talk about the empath's trap, which is staying small, at least partly out of compassion for your loved one. Well, in this episode and every episode, my commitment is to share with you the greatest tools and skills that I know to help you find healthy love and keep it flourishing in your life and heal your life in the process, because the skills of dating are nothing more than the skills of love. And those are the greatest skills of all for a meaningful life. And if you'd like to learn more about the deeper dating path to self-love and intimacy, just go to deeperdatingpodcast.com, and there you'll find transcripts of all of my over 200 episodes, and you'll also be able to sign up for my mailing list and get a really wonderful free ebook of all of the key ideas that I teach just by going to deeperdatingpodcast.com or deeperdatinggifts.com. So let me jump right in. As a psychotherapist who's practiced almost 40 years, and as someone who has been on a passionate journey to become more skilled at love, this is what I think is one of the biggest challenges in an ongoing way in relationships. And this could be a new relationship. It could actually be in dating, or it could be in a long-term committed relationship. It's staying smaller than we are out of fear of losing our partner, but also out of compassion for our partner so that we don't scare them, intimidate them, or just from internalized messages telling us, who do we think we are? I think that all of us have a greatness inside of us. And greatness is a scary thing for so many reasons, because of ways that people have misused power, misused ego, hurt us with their own overbearingness. And also, especially if we're empaths, we carry that pain and we don't want to inflict it on other people. Also, our full size asks us to do scary things. Our potential to create things scares us. I call these parts of ourselves that scare us with their power, with their tenderness, with their asks, with their hunger, our core gifts. They're at the very core of our being, and we often try to control them or hide them or disguise them because we haven't yet learned the skills to live in the world with these incredible qualities that have gotten us in trouble before. And also, our core gifts ask us to do scary things. They ask us to create things that may not have been created, to say things that no one else wants to say. They might ask us to express things or ask for things in our intimate relationships, like, honey, could you touch me in this way? Could you hold me in this way? Honey, something is not feeling right. Can we talk about it? Or just doing the really big ass swinging out in terms of what we let ourselves admit to ourselves that we want and need. There is a quality of size, of taking up space, of shaking things up that we step into when we step into our authenticity. And it's scary. It's scary for all of us. And I think it is in some ways especially scary for empaths. Why? Because we sense the wounds of other people. And our size, our honesty, our authenticity is challenging. It's challenging to us. It makes us face things that we don't want to face. It encourages us to say things that we might be afraid to say. It asks us to break down walls. It asks us to take risks. It asks us to be generous in ways that are scary. Our full authenticity is always at is it's inviting us into a self that's bigger than we are comfortable being. And often it's inviting us to a self that is kind of we're worried that it's going to be uncomfortable for our partner or our beloved or our date to be able to tolerate. It's challenging. Our greatness and our gifts by nature are challenging. And when we as empaths see someone who has a frailty or a vulnerability or a fragility, we don't want to hurt them. So we diminish ourselves so as not to create pain for someone else. If our loved one is also someone who's prone to anger or control issues, we might diminish ourselves for fear of triggering them. Or maybe our partner is avoidant, and we know that if we say certain things or ask for certain things, they might retreat, and we don't want to have that happen. None of us want to get rejected. And then there's also the fear that if we share these parts of ourselves, the things we want, the things we feel, the things that we see, the things that we need that just feel scary to us, there is the fear that our partner might not be capable. And there'd be the disappointment of knowing like they can't go there with us. They can't join us in this journey. So there's a fear of loss, a fear of rejection, and also this fear that I think doesn't get talked about that much, which is the fear of our fullness hurting or intimidating or thwarting someone else. And this empathy is something that really can't be ignored because I think it's really connected to codependency, and I think codependency has a way worse rap than it deserves. Not that codependency can't cause the most breathtaking pain. It absolutely can. But what's not talked about enough is that codependency is a misuse of a spirit of generosity. Yeah, it has really bad side effects a lot of the time, but there is something precious at its core because people who are codependent tend to be givers. They tend to be generous in nature. So they use that generosity sometimes to get what they want and to avoid what they don't want. But that essential quality of generosity is there. So this is a deep question and a precious question, an important question. If you consider yourself an empath in any way, how have you made yourself smaller? How have you reduced yourself to not create pain for you or your beloved? So, this is kind of an intense image, but if you picture a dog with an electric fence. So this dog is all of a sudden put in a yard with one of those invisible electric fences. They have to wear a collar, and there's this invisible electric fence. And they can't tell anything's going on, but they walk close to where that fence is and they get jolted. They pull away. After a time, you watch them traverse the yard as if those boundaries weren't there. They don't step into them because they know it's going to cause them pain. If that electric wireless fence is removed and you put, let's say, some dog food outside of it, they're going to be so frightened to go out there. That's what happens to us. We are trained with a different kind of jolt about who we're supposed to be and who we're not supposed to be. And even though something inside us is always whispering, speaking, shouting, inviting us to be who we really are, to be more of our full size, still, the fear of getting hurt, and also the habit and the identity that actually gets formed of this smaller us has such tremendous gravitational pull. So here we go with our fabulous question. Where have you had to diminish the size of your being, your personal power, your hunger for truth, your hunger for touch, your hunger for connectedness, your hunger for deep conversation, your hunger for sex, connected sex, your experimentation? What are the asks that you hold back in your relationship? Because those point toward your core gifts. I think that for me, so much of my personal growth has been to kind of normalize the things that I thought I wasn't supposed to say. So then, what do we do when we can't share our full size? Well, there's a cost. There's a cost that happens. It's as if where we're supposed to be, we create a vacuum because we kind of erase or cover who we really are. And nature abhors a vacuum. It always will get filled with painful or pain causing situations, masochistic situations, situations that are hurtful for other people, because violence begets violence. And the stifling of your fullness creates a cascade of quiet violence. So the alternative is like a really scary but beautiful one. It's this process of validating and honoring who we are, becoming comfortable in our own skin, learning to take brave steps. I feel like this is such an important part of relationships, of those brave steps. In my intensives, I witnessed people in their dating life taking brave steps. I witnessed people who are in relationships who come into the intensive having really brave steps that they have to take too, which are finally telling their partners what they need, what's missing, what they long for, asking for what they really want. This is scary stuff. And the first step is the normalizing of it. And then the second step is the asking. And then when we have a partner who can hear that, it's such a coming out. It is such a liberation. And we get a taste in all of this of our potential and our potential greatness and our potential size. And here's another piece that's really important. And Jung talked about this so brilliantly. The parts of ourselves, like those pieces of ourselves that we think are too vulnerable, or, and this is a big one, too hungry, or too needy, or too intense, or too alive, or too different. When we suppress these parts of ourselves, they become shadow parts of ourselves. They never develop the maturity skills to be able to live successfully in the world. We either act them out or we act them in by suppressing them and kind of stifling these parts of ourselves, or acting out by handling them in ways and expressing them in ways that are not helpful, that are not skillful, that are not compassionate. But every part of our being, our authentic self, that we shame ourselves or frighten ourselves into not showing, so that we develop a sense of self which is actually smaller than who we really are. Those pieces of the territory of ourselves that we can't claim become shadow. And those shadow parts haunt us, and they have a kind of monstrous quality, and they appear in our lives at us in painful and diminishing ways again and again. And if we have any parts in relationship, like for me, I know that there's a way that I always I felt less than, I felt criticized, I felt diminished in an ongoing way in relationships. Things just kept kind of ending up that way. And over time, I realized that what I wasn't doing was speaking the scary truths because I didn't want to hurt people and I didn't want to get hurt either. So I wouldn't speak these scary truths and I was diminishing my own full self. I was like losing my backbone. And hence, people didn't take me as seriously. And then I found over time, and many of you might relate to this, that as I began to feel and speak my truth, that happened less and less. It still happens. And also, a lot of the things I say get me in trouble. So it happens in that way naturally too in my life. But I claim these parts of myself with love and I can express them with so much more gentleness now. You know, something I say often is that in nature, creatures with a spine don't need an armor. Creatures without a spine need an armor. Creatures with a spine are flexible. They can be vulnerable. They can be soft, but they have backbone. That is the embracing of our bigger self, the making space for our bigger self. When we don't do that, there's this lost territory. And from that lost territory, we're not going to be as truthful. We're not going to be as empowered. We are not going to be as present and as engaged. And we'll be acting out in whatever ways we act out more because we're not going to be in conscious, present, skin to skin relationship with our partner or with the world. Not that this is an easy thing to do. So, what's the answer? How do we get out of this? Well, we get out of it in the very same way that we got into it, through relationships. It's our love of relationships. It's our need for relationships that helped us learn to become smaller than we really are, less amazing than we really are, less empowered, less unique than we really are, less groundbreaking than we really are. And it's our need for and love of relationships that can save us. How is that? Well, a brilliant, wonderful therapist of mine said once, and I never forgot it, and I say it here a bunch, that the best way out of an old hypnosis is through a current relationship with a better reality. So, how does that happen? Well, for me, what it meant was finding relationships with people who were willing to let me speak my truth, who loved my sharing my uniqueness and my authenticity and truth, and were trying to do that themselves. It was people who kind of loved the fire of a certain level of realness and truth telling and loved it in themselves as well, but it was also kind people because I needed and I need kindness and goodness. That's a really important thing to me. It's a core gift that I was so ashamed of for so long, that quality of goodness. And thank God through the work that I did, because the kind of people who I was attracted to before I could embrace this were cocky, kind of asshole guys. And that was many, many years ago, and, it was a journey, it was a journey, but I am with someone who is so good, such a good man, and, that's like the heart of everything for me, that I have that with my husband. How did that happen? That happened because I stopped being ashamed of my qualities of tenderness. And I chose someone who was open to the kind of wild truth telling, feeling sharing, childlike being that I am or can be. So thank God for that. So this is the key, is surrounding yourself with people and looking for this in your intimate relationship with whom you can really be you and you feel seen and you feel nourished in that. And you know when that's happening and you know when it's not happening, even though when it's not happening, you might be telling yourself that it's your fault or your problem. No, We all need to be with people with whom our authentic self feels invited and feels safe and feels allowed to be real. As we do that, we then learn to take bigger and bigger risks. Also, the people who can love us like that love the very same qualities we were ashamed of. When we're with people who love those qualities, for example, me, I'm kind of a lot. I'm a lot. And everyone who loves me knows I'm a lot. I give a lot and I ask for a lot. And I ask for a lot of truth and I give a lot of truth. And it's a lot. And sometimes it's too much for people. But the people who really love me love that quality. And so, what I would say to all of you is whatever those qualities are that you've been afraid to show, that's exactly what you want to look for, is the kind of people who, as they see those qualities, appreciate them, essentially love them, treasure them, invite them, and allow them. It is only in the presence of those people, really, that we can heal. And also, because these core gifts are often surrounded by shame, surrounded by fear, surrounded by, oh God, how am I going to do this? Surrounded by those kind of feelings of hesitation. Because of that, but particularly, I guess, because of the shame, we don't necessarily see the gifts that lie there. So, how do we discover these gifts? Not through pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps, but through people who can look at us and see the gifts where we can't see them and instruct us and tell us what these gifts are. And that is how they get excavated. That is how they get reclaimed. That is how you come into your greatness and your fullness and your humanity. And that is how you build your wings, the wings that will allow you to really experience rich, rich intimacy. So these are questions for all of us. How do we keep ourselves small? How do we clip our wings? How do we do that out of compassion? Who are the people with whom we can share these parts of ourselves and feel like they are invited, welcomed, and delighted in? And those are our tasks in friendship, in finding love, in creating an artistic community, a community of growth, in creating this in our families to the degree that we can. This is the task. And what an amazing thing that life is built in such a way that we're always being invited to be bigger, to be fuller, to be richer than our current self identity. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to connecting on the next episode of the Deeper Dating Podcast.
And that's it for today's episode of Deeper Dating. Be sure to go to deeperdatingpodcast.com as Ken has a few more gifts for you. Then join us on the next episode.